Hello and welcome to the ComSpark Magazine interview series. I am Brad Weeks with LiveWell Capital, and we are partnering with ComSpark Magazine in a series of interviews. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Coleman Kane, Principal Cyber Intelligence Analyst for GE Aviation. Hi Coleman, how are you today?
Hey, Brad. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So Coleman, just to get started, a lot of people want to get into cybersecurity. They find that field to be really exciting. Can you tell us about your start?
Sure, yeah. So my start's kind of interesting. I got into this about 10 years ago. Cybersecurity wasn't a very big field at a lot of companies. You didn't have the university programs that you do now today. And I actually came over to the team at GE as a software developer. So I'd been in software engineering and IT work for about a decade at that point. And they needed somebody who had software engineering skills to build custom tools for their security program. So we could do some of the advanced security work that now is our bread and butter today. It was just starting about 10 years ago.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about your specific role at GE today and some of the things you're currently working on.
Yeah, so my role, Principal Cyber Intelligence Analyst, is focused in the organization of our security team, which is pretty big, that focuses on a lot of the security investigations, the security intelligence information sharing. So people who are targeting us, with cyber attacks, are also targeting others as well. Some of them specifically want to target defense companies or specifically want to target aviation companies, stuff like that. So we work, the team I work on is the one that is focused on investigating our incidents, responding to our threats, responding to our alerts, stuff like that. But then also we have a big role in sharing what we're learning, sharing our findings, just sharing the activity we're seeing with our peers in both the defense and the aviation industries as well, so that everyone collectively can stay ahead of those threats.
Yeah, can you go into a little bit about how you go about sharing? Do you just pick up the phone call and say, "Hey, we were just hit," or what does it look like?
So it runs the gamut. It's all often dependent upon how companies want to engage. There are some that is literally a pick up the phone, or nowadays it's text your peer over there, right?
Right.
But there are a lot of formal information sharing communities as well. So the United States, I'm going to botch it, but the Critical Infrastructure Security program that the Department of Homeland Security has put together authorizes what are called information sharing and analysis centers, which are largely just really big cyber activity sharing communities that also have analysts working within them to look at all the activity that's coming in from like the hundreds of different companies, and then try and identify, are there patterns there? Is it certain types of certain types of defense companies, like only aircraft companies or only, software companies that are being targeted with this one type of activity. So a lot of the adversaries that we're set up to defend against, in addition to your typical cyber adversaries you usually read about for cybercrime and stuff like that, we're also dealing with defending against a lot of your advanced and nation state funded adversaries that are trying to steal military secrets and trying to steal cutting edge commercial technology that would help enrich their own industrial sectors, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. How's the field of cybersecurity changed since you've been a part of it?
So it's relatively new, right? I'd say the big one is, education. So as I mentioned, when I started on the team in 2010, there weren't a whole bunch of formal cybersecurity education programs at universities. It wasn't until about 2014 or 2015 that the University of Cincinnati actually reached out to us, in addition to others in the Cincinnati area, to try to establish their cybersecurity program, which is now among the handful of programs across the country that are accredited by the NSA for cyber operations. And they're not the only one now. There's a whole bunch of other schools that have set up cybersecurity programs that are either, through NSA or through other organizations as well. So that's a big one. I'd say that the security industry has changed significantly as well. So the vendors that are present in the industry, you've got some of the ones who've been there for a while. So Cisco's a real, they've been around since as long as I can remember, right? But then the ones that dominate the industry, like CrowdStrike or FireEye, those companies have emerged with cutting edge technology more recently. That's really been a game changer that a lot of the companies that have been around for a while have started to try to chase. And now you've got even Microsoft is a real great example of a company that has been around the OS space for a very long time and in the productivity and office space, right? They themselves have decided to borrow a whole bunch of what has been working really well in the security industry and a lot of the lessons learned in the security industry to build up their own security practice, the Mystic team internally, and really try to bundle security with the operating systems. So security is starting to become something. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're getting there very quickly. It's becoming something that is now expected rather than it being this add-on. And it's expected to exist within your software engineering organization. And it's expected to exist within, the operating system on your computer is supposed to have security features now, instead of it being, something where I buy the computer and then I go to one of 5 companies to get the security stuff, right?
Right. Well, and you talk about that change, that now it's becoming an expectation. So you have that change occurring. You also have a change occurring in terms of where businesses store their data. And as businesses continue to move to the cloud, how has that changed the way you have to plan and you have to do work related to security?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a huge paradigm shift for a lot of us. So, we've been in the computing industry for decades, right? So some of the original parts of the Unix operating system that runs a lot of your infrastructure today. We were one of the core companies that built some of that technology back in the early days of computing. So we've been in our own data centers and our own networks and our own custom computers, and servers for a very long time. Now we're having to move to to start adopting cases where someone else is hosting our data, someone else is hosting applications for us,
Right.
and we're really just paying them a subscription. That brings out a very big very big challenge for us on the security side, because a lot of security, especially for us, has been based on having access and visibility to your data, having access and visibility to the networks and the computers that house your data. And trying to make sure that we can watch all of that stuff in real time and look for any bad activity that's going on. Now we have to work with these third-party companies, these third-party suppliers, in order to achieve a lot of the same sort of level of visibility, because I'll be totally honest, our threats are not the traditional threats that most cloud computing is really built against, right? So the security that even comes on a Windows computer that you buy at, say, Micro Center or something, that's consumer grade security. And a lot of the, basic enterprise security and baseline enterprise security is what you'll get out of a lot of the cloud security solutions that exist today. And it's all really good stuff, but it's also stuff that if you're an adversary that's nation state backed, that's supposed to be doing cyber espionage or something like that, you have the money and the resources and the time and, and even in some cases the experience to be able to thwart what comes out of the box in that. That's kind of your job, right? So it's our job, to figure out how we have to secure our stuff in that new world without necessarily being able to take for granted the total ownership of the infrastructure. So
how do you do that? How do you work hand in hand with these providers? It feels like that'd be a challenge.
Yeah, so it is. I'd say that one of the benefits that the providers give us is the ability for us to break up our data and break it up into different segments. So if I want to go and host our applications in a data center, I am limited in the number of network wires and routers and servers that I can put in that data center, right? The nice benefit of the cloud is that I can create, I won't say infinite, but the number is very high, right? So I can create a lot of these small virtual networks in the cloud, and then I can pick and choose how I want to secure each one of these little virtual networks differently if I want to. So I can do a lot more a la carte security solutioning rather than having to worst common denominator, right, or highest common denominator, right? So in data center, I'm securing that data center based upon the one application that is the most sensitive or has the most security requirements. In the cloud, I don't have to do that as much anymore. So I can benefit, from having the other stuff segmented off from that. And then I can maybe replicate in a slower manner the security practices that I have in my environment, right? So I can replicate a lot of that, but I don't have to replicate all of it to the point where it becomes too expensive.
I mean, Coleman, 2020 has seen some really unique challenges. I got to think even more so for you and your role.
Yep.
What are you doing to protect? I mean, you have people working from home, very, very different, using, different technologies that maybe weren't meant for the way they're being used, being downloaded to computers. How are you managing that risk?
Yep. Yeah. So, again, the big thing is working with our, with those partners I mentioned earlier, information sharing partners. So, and I'm not the only one on the team. So there's a lot of other people on the team too. Working with them to try and make sure that we're staying ahead of or I should say, we're keeping an eye on the different threats that everyone's seeing. I'll say that we have a lot more of these virtual meetings. I feel like within our team even, we meet a lot more frequently than say we used to when we were all on site in the building, just to ensure that, we communicate what we're seeing and everything like that. So it's, we have to respond by increasing the amount of awareness that's out there. Our company went through a good amount of effort to, concerted effort earlier this year when we knew everyone was going to have to move to work from home to try to lock down a lot of our architecture. And so that's the other team that we have that isn't my immediate team, but I work with them a lot, is the security architecture team. And so they, basically worked like double time to ensure that our VPN connections were secure, our VPN connections were available, because we need to make a lot of this technology work really well, so that our users don't also, have to resort to insecure behaviors in order to get their jobs done or answer questions, right? And that's something that becomes even more risky and when everyone's working at home, right?
Mm-hmm. So what do you see as the challenges for the future of technology as it relates to cybersecurity from where you sit?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So the move to the cloud environment, that's going to be something that keeps progressing. So there's other peers that we have in the industry, and then there's companies even locally that we know of that are just now starting a lot of their kind of cloud migration. I think that one of the key things that comes up, and there was a incident that I think happened, I can't remember if it was January of 2019 or January of 2018, called the Cloud Hopper incident. And really kind of what it boiled down to was it was a cyber espionage attack targeting a handful of cloud providers, right? So what happens is all of us different companies used to have these different data centers that we all ran. And in some cases, maybe smaller companies hosted their stuff in data centers that were regional, right? All of that stuff is now starting to go away or significantly contract. And you're starting to see a progression of companies relying upon like 5 major players in the data center space. So that's basically what the cloud is. It's a very well managed data center, right, at its core. And so those companies become the ones that have the bigger bullseye for cyber espionage. If you can get into one of them, then, you know, it's a lot harder than just saying like walking in the door or something. But if you can figure out how to get access to the data that's there, then you don't just have our data, you have everyone else's data that's in those things. So I think that becomes the new big target, right, for a lot of these big espionage operations. It's kind of a shift away from us, a shift away from our networks, and a shift towards those. And so, kind of our goal, our push in response to that is trying to push the envelope on what data visibility the providers are able to provide to us, right? Making sure that we use. So there's a lot of stuff that AWS and Microsoft Azure offer that gives you telemetry about how your data is being accessed, who's using it, that type of stuff. All that information is available, but usually not turned on by default because it's a lot of data and it's overwhelming for a lot of clients. Trying to figure out how to make that not overwhelming and manage all that data because it's a lot.
Right.
When you consolidate everything, it becomes a lot, right? So we're talking about one data center that houses what we used to do in 10. And that's, I think, going to be where a lot of the rest of the industry moves as well, is going to be security companies not just trying to figure out how do I put AV on my laptop or how do I create network sensing technologies, but they're going to be trying to work on how do I do a lot more of like data science and data mining against these massive telemetry data sources, which, telemetry is basically the, record, like transaction records almost, right? So it's transaction records of your data, transaction records of user accounts, transaction records of using all the different services that are available, things like that. It's how do you use data science? How do you use, say, machine learning and things like that in order to turn these unmanageable problems into something that is manageable without throwing data away.
Right. Do you see an application for blockchain in this? And how would that go about being used?
So I'd say that blockchain is one of those technologies that I feel like there's still a large amount of like academic research being done on that to try to figure out where it can be applied.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that I think right now a lot of its applications are in transaction records, right? So trying to ensure that the data is uncorruptible or data corruption is something that is detectable, right?
Right.
So trying to ensure that your data, when you store it, you have the ability to determine if it's been tampered with, right? So that's a lot of the applications. So a lot of the cryptocurrency systems that you see out there are primarily based around that. They're based around trying to have a durable layer for storing all the different transactions, so you have a paper trail or a receipt trail or whatever.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of people who are looking into that. How can we try and apply it to the security space? I think a lot of it's probably going to be focused more on like the confidentiality and then also the durability, right? So making sure that when the data leaves the cloud provider, that I have a way of validating that the copy of the data I got is identical to what came from the cloud provider. So, and that's where I see the big play in it right now. I'll say that the security industry right now is primarily playing with technologies like the kind of your basic machine learning and your basic data like baselining and anomaly detection, right? So they're kind of playing in those spaces right now and trying to figure out even how well those and where those fit into the security monitoring space.
Right. I'd be curious, in your role there at GE, is there an accomplishment you're most proud of in what you've been able to do?
Yeah, so I'd say that, the accomplishment I guess I'd be most proud of is the cyber intelligence team that we have within our organization.
Yeah.
So as I said, I came here 10 years ago, and that happened to be during a period of time when we were reorganizing the old security team that was a lot more of an architecture-focused security team, which we still have a large architecture component to it, so we didn't get rid of any of that. But we moved to a model where you can build secure architecture, you can securely architect the company, but there's a whole bunch of people whose job it is out there that are paid what amounts to infinite amounts of money to try to figure out how to break the most cutting edge architecture that there is today. And so our team was set up to do the investigation that would have to be done when they finally figured out how to get in, that type of thing. So I'd say the cyber intelligence organization that we set up is kind of modeled around the program development work and program research work that I did early on, and we're able to do incident analysis. So analyzing analyzing incidents, those that do happen to get in the door and those that don't, right? Those that were failed, blocked at the perimeter. We're able to do that. And then we're able to share that information not only with our partners, but also the information that we learn about, we're able to deliver to our network sensing array within minutes of recording it in the system. So we've got this kind of constantly going feedback loop that gives us the ability to do that, gives us the ability to do incident relationship analysis. So if we have, I'd say that our team responds to somewhere on the order of like maybe 20 to 50 incidents a day, none of which are at all severe. They're all stuff that that we block within seconds. But we collect the data from that, we drop it into our system. We have an organization set up that allows us to go and mine through that data set and find out, okay, of the hundreds that happened this week, can you find the 7 that seem to be related to one another, and can you show it to the team so that we can go and investigate that cluster of activity to try to determine, is this something that's like the really bad guys, right? Or is it something that's your more kind of traditional run-of-the-mill cybercrime? So basically allows us to triage and figure out and sort all of the attacks to figure out which ones should we be putting the rest of the week's effort into going and digging up more information on, because those that's how we find, say, the newest advanced adversaries, the newest advanced threats. So the whole program set up to be able to do that kind of repeating cycle or OODA loop or whatever you want to call it. That thing is probably the accomplishment I'm most proud of.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great. So I was talking to a friend of mine before this, and I asked him if he had any questions for you, actually. He's in technology, and he said, yeah, what I want to know is, what are the steps for a technology professional who's been in the industry?
Yep.
What are the steps for somebody that wants to get into cybersecurity, that has an interest in it?
Yeah.
Get in. Do you have any thoughts or tips on that?
Yeah. So the traditional the traditional avenue that's often available for people is training, right? So there's a lot of different trainings you can take. There's a lot of different entry level trainings you can take. So what is it? EC Council and then SANS are 2 organizations that offer a number of different levels of training, including some entry level stuff. I'd say, and this just kind of comes with what typically works best for me, right? Is actually getting in and doing the work and stuff like that. So my recommendation too would be that all of these security teams that are out there oftentimes need people who are general IT technology experts, right? So that's like one thing. So you're dealing with working with firewalls or working with AWS or something like that, right? That's not necessarily a security specific role. That's something that security teams need, people who just are experts in those things.
Right.
And then on top of that, they need the security expertise as well, which oftentimes is something you can develop, within the team. You can supplant or you could supplement, right? So I'd say that look for a security team that's looking to hire an architect or an engineer or something like that in those spaces. So where you can you're already a cloud software developer, right? There's security teams that need that expertise. Look for that. It's probably going to be listed as security architect, and you look for cloud and the security architect. And that's honestly how some of the people on our security team that do that work today came over there in the first place. Like for me, I had a large amount of like software engineering background, did C++, did Unix work, stuff like that. And I got hired here because they needed a software developer to build like network monitoring sensors for the company, right?
Right.
I didn't have security experience before that. And then we built sensors and we started detecting attacks. I had some other tangential skills that involved, so I initially got hired in, my first real security analyst role on the team was malware analysis. So, and that's one thing I teach at the University of Cincinnati is malware analysis. So, breaking apart the actors' tools. But I got hired in after doing the tool development to do that work, mainly because I had the background in software debugging, software analysis, right? So, because I did that a while ago. So, in both of those cases, it was a tangential skill that was not security related at all,
Right.
that then I used to get a semi-security role. And then once I was in that role, then I worked with the other people. And that's the other key thing, right? Is that if you happen to get a tangential role where you're doing software development for a security team, or you're doing architecture work, network architecture work for a cloud security team or something like that, right? You need to be proactive and reaching out to your peers, right? So chances are you get hired into a team like that. You have people who have 5 years experience on the team. You have people who have been doing security incident response and things. If you want to get into it, if you want to become like security professional, while you're working on that team, make sure you reach out to those people. Make sure you have them, run down the war story history of all the incidents at the company, because, we love talking about that stuff.
Right.
So, reflecting on what we had to deal with like 8 years ago is just amazing compared to now. And, and honestly, like technology itself has gotten so much better nowadays too, that the security problems we deal with are a lot different. And like arguably are a lot more suited to people who, who have that software engineering background or have that cloud engineering background or that kind of IT architecture background and things like that. So we do need a lot more of that in the security space too, especially when we're talking about building new architectures to try and chase everything that the cloud's doing on a daily basis, because that's another big challenge that we run into. And I know this kind of digs back into one of your earlier questions, but just to hit on the cloud thing again, AWS and Azure, like those things change. What's in there changes like on a monthly basis, right?
Right.
And it's like my data center that we had here, like that thing didn't change for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, right? It's probably the same when we shut it down as it was when I got hired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big paradigm shift. So it's
Right.
like none of us we're already struggling to keep up with the cyber threats. And then on top of that, you throw on there the fact that like the software industry wants to go agile with everything. We can't keep up with that, but there are a lot of people who can. And those are the people, who right now, it's probably a lot of them who are interested in how do I get into security? And that's what you can do. Bring that ability to keep up with, what's Azure doing, what's AWS doing, what are they offering? Work with us on trying to figure out, okay, how do the incidents of the past, so if I learn about the incidents of the past, how would I rework those to try and attack this new service that AWS came out, right? Because chances are that's what the adversary is doing in the background, and they have access to all those people. So
Right.
we need access to all those people too.
Right. So know your unique skill and don't discount it. Work on maybe some type of accreditation or certification,
Yeah.
and then be proactive. Raise your hand, grab somebody that's doing the work,
Yeah.
and build a relationship to network.
Yeah, it's like mentorship, I guess, is like one,
Right.
you can come over as a security newcomer, right? With these really good engineering skills and architecture skills that your security team probably doesn't have, arguably. You can mentor them on that stuff, and they can mentor you on how the company's been, subject to cyber intrusions or cyber attacks in the past.
Right, right. Well, I'll pass that along to my friend, and now that we have a relationship, maybe I'll pass your name along too.
Totally fine. Happy to talk.
Oh, great. Well, but thank you, Coleman Kane, for joining us today, and for our viewers, please visit comspark.tech for additional interviews. Again, thank you, Coleman, for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me, Brad. It was great.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yep, you too.